It is No Gifts Please, the parenting podcast by the pair with no real gifts, but a whole lot of gumption. Hey everyone, I'm Steve Noviello.
Hello, I'm Jenny Anchondo.
And new year, new us, new things happening, right?
Same us. It is the same us.
It is the same us.
I'm okay with that though.
I do want to say though, for those of you who have listened along since our, the inception of our project, which gosh, at this point was last September, because we started at the beginning of the school year. We wanted to time it. We felt that a parenting podcast should start at the beginning of the school year.
Yes. Can I just give a little moment for me being so annoyed with you launching that with like 0 days notice and now me being so thankful that you launched it with 0 days notice.
Yeah. I was like, this is it. We're doing it.
Well, because I kept talking about the treadmill. Like once we get on this treadmill, we cannot stop. And we have to have an episode a week, regardless of what's happening in our lives. Right. And you're like, yep, we're okay. Good. See you in a day. And I was like, logos. He's like, yep.
Done. Art, done.
I mean, everything. Mugs with our faces on them.
Okay, and now most recently, advertiser, done. I want to give a shout out to the folks at Vandergriff Honda, Toyota, Acura. So the owner-operator is a guy named Charlie Evans, and we met, years ago on some story I was doing about something, and he was so wonderful, and I actually ended up buying a car that day because we were talking about pricing, and it's such a good deal.
And you did a story on him?
I was like, whoa.
And you were the gift that kept on giving.
Seriously, right? And one had nothing to do, with the other. I mean, it was the same price for anybody. It didn't know, it didn't matter that I was doing a story. But when we, the difficult thing about kind of our journalism background, and then of course we have this show, is inviting somebody to be an advertiser on it. I feel like they have to be you become linked to that brand or that person, right? I think that people know,
association,
correct,
of course.
So to have an advertiser, and again, the folks at Vandergriff, Acura, Toyota, and Honda have signed on for us. First 40 shows, which is great. And I love it because I also really do believe in what they do, which is great. They have great service and great people. And many, many times I've sent folks there.
And I think it can be so intimidating. That whole process is so intimidating. So to have somebody like you who's worked in the consumer realm for all these years, and you really are savvy, and you don't let anybody off the hook, which is great. It means that you're actually legitimate in what you do. So then when you recommend something, people know that it has value and it has weight, and they say, okay, well, he actually went here and accidentally bought a car while he was there. They were so good.
And believe it or not, so the other podcast that I used to do during my day job, he was my first guest. It was how to navigate the nonsense of like buying a car. Like, really, do you need X? And he was like, no, like you need this and this, and don't worry about this. And here's what you should pay.
And that says everything about a business person.
For sure.
They're willing to open up sort of their ball of tricks and say, this is how it works.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, all right. I want to talk about our guest today because, as if the day job and is not business. In full disclosure, so I'm on the board of the Grant Halliburton Foundation, and this is an organization that I first started working with, years ago at this point. It's got to be 7 or 8 years at this point, because my friend TJ, who and have met many times, works there and asked me if I would come and MC an event.
Many times. I have trick-or-treated with which escalates a friendship to a new level, really.
He had asked me to come to MC an event, and we do a lot of that, right?
You could do it every night.
And let's be honest, sometimes you go to these events and it's like, oh,
like you didn't need me here.
And certainly not an hour early, right? I know how to read out loud. These folks.
Oh my gosh, you kill me. It's so true. They're like, we're going to need you there at 3 p.m. The event starts at 8. And I'm like, I will be there at 7:45.
Exactly.
At the earliest.
Yeah. And we'll be good. Don't worry about it. But when hundreds of people, not only there at the events and stuff, but it's what these folks do between the events that really makes such a difference, because this is a boots on the ground commitment to what I think right now is probably the most urgent need that we have as a society. And that's mental health.
I could not agree more. And I think that it's one thing to feel it maybe prior to becoming a parent, that the urgent need.
Sure.
And then when you're in it and you see how close it is to your own family and your own friends and your own loved ones, you realize the urgency is paramount. And so we have to really put it at the forefront. So that's what we have this platform here. And I just hope we can educate people today.
Okay, so let's welcome. You want to introduce Kevin?
Okay, yes. So Kevin Hall, I think this is so fascinating. He had a 30-year career in advertising. and then really had this need to serve a different purpose. In early 2017, he left the industry to join the Grant Halliburton Foundation as Chief Operating Officer. He is the president. He's working with the staff on day-to-day operations.
Correct.
And so we're here to talk not only about those events, but also, sort of this epidemic of loneliness and what we can all do. Kevin, I'm fascinated by the career change, first of all.
Well, good morning and Happy New Year, by the way.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for having me.
So again, we've known each other for, I think I want to say I might have even predated you at Grant Halliburton Foundation.
I think you
maybe
did.
by a year or so. And I have to say, to your credit, it was great when I got there, but it is now just a whole different level. And the thing that impresses me about what you folks do is the tangible resources for folks that they can really turn to in times of crisis. So first things first, for folks who are not familiar with Grant Halliburton Foundation, before he was a foundation, Grant Halliburton was a young man who died by suicide.
That's right. Grant was a very talented kid. He was an artist. He was a musician. He went to Plano West High School, had a lot of friends, but he struggled for a number of years with his mental health, and his family did everything they knew to do to get him the help he needed. And ultimately it just wasn't enough, and he took his life in the fall of 2005.
One of the things that always strikes me about talking to Vanita Halliburton, who's Grant's mother, is when she tells the story of when ultimately Grant died by suicide. It hits me every time she says, "I had just spoken to him. I just talked to him earlier that day, and I thought he sounds really good today."
Yeah,
and within hours he was gone.
Yeah, and I think the family was really blindsided by his suicide, and they said, "What happened here?" And they really took some time to really go back and really assess, what did we miss?
And
they just realized there was so much information they needed to know that nobody ever told them. They just, the most basic example is Vanita would tell you that in the 5 or 6 years that they were getting treatment for Grant, not a single time did anyone ever tell them, doctors, hospitals, you name it, nobody ever told them the warning signs of someone who might be suicidal. And when they looked back and they understood the warning signs after the fact, they said, "Oh my God, he exhibited all of these," but they never knew. And that's really what inspired them to start the foundation in 2006.
So how do we go about navigating that for us, for folks who are listening? What is the difference between my kid's an introvert, my kid's lonely, or my kid might have something that we really need to get some resources for here?
Yeah, it's just paying attention to your kids and listening. More than anything, listening to your kids. A lot of times they'll express that they're struggling or that they're having a hard time, and it's very easy for parents to dismiss it and say, "Oh, you're fine. You'll get over it." But we just need to do a better job as parents and adults when those kids are expressing concern or expressing a little bit of anxiety or whatever the case may be. We just need to take it much more seriously and really listen to them and really dig in and understand. And as far as behaviors go, every young kid is going to sleep late on occasion. Every young kid is going to have a moment of anger, all these different types of things. But it's that sustained behavior that continues when you see some of these things like not eating right, not sleeping right, staying up late. When these things become sustained behaviors, then you really need to pay attention and say, okay, what's going on here?
And I do think this generation of parents, by and large, is a generation of parents that perhaps was parented by people who say, "Come on now, suck it up," and so I think there's really an openness among parents today to learn this information, which is great, right? Like that was really tough for me and that did not work out well for me, and I want to do it differently. I think it's the how. So then if you see some of those signs and you see the sustained sleeping in late, what's the best next step?
Yeah, again, it's just having those conversations with your kids, and sometimes it's a tough conversation. And if you sense that your child is maybe depressed or really struggling, there are some hard conversations that we need to be asking. And it's, how are you doing? And if they're expressing real struggle, it's it's appropriate. It's hard, but it's appropriate to say, well, are you thinking about, suicidal thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Is that happening? That's a very legitimate question to ask a kid who's really showing maybe potential signs of depression. And if they say yes, then you need to take it a step further and say, well, have you thought about how you would go about doing that? Do you have a plan?
Do you have a plan?
And these are big red flags.
Those are such hard questions for
really
people.
Hard.
The weight of your words right now is so heavy.
Really hard.
It's really hard for people to actually say that sentence.
Right. But it could, you know what?
Could save them.
It could save them. It could absolutely save them.
For the parents who are listening, who are saying, listen, my 13-year-old is not going to engage in this conversation. They're going to sit, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. No, it's good. Blah, blah. I mean, and you feel like you're kind of hitting a brick wall because I would imagine, and my kids aren't there yet, but I would imagine that there's this desire for the parent to not want this to be the case, right? And we've talked about on the show before, even with your IVF journey, where your husband would be like, "Oh, it's okay, don't worry," and you're like, "I need you to join me in my feelings right now because I need to kind of walk through this." If you're hitting a brick wall with your kid who's just kind of giving you what are the resources that Grant Halliburton Foundation has for them? Because there's one of the things that you folks do. Listen, if you think your kid is lonely, I think parents, and I've met many of them through your organization over the years, feel like they too are the only ones going through this. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of power in finding another adult who can sit you down and say, I know where you are. Let me tell you what happened to me.
Right. Yeah, we have our Here for Texas mental health navigation line. It is a website, a searchable database of resources, but it's also a phone line where people can call and talk to somebody and look for help. We have trained volunteers who take these calls. And sometimes a parent will call and not necessarily be ready to say, I need a therapist or a counselor for my child. It may be, here's what's going, to your point, here's what's going on. I'm trying to have these conversations with my kids and I'm not really getting anywhere, or my child. What should I do? How do I go about this? And our navigation line can help sort of navigate that conversation. And ultimately, if there's a need for resources for a therapist or a counselor or whatever the case may be, then we can help guide them to find the appropriate resources that fits whatever their situation is.
I'm going to interject because I feel like Kevin's underselling this here a little bit.
Please do.
Again, when we're talking about not being alone, I mean, pat yourselves on the back here. I mean, 1,000 people have called into the mental health navigation line in the last year?
Yeah, we're over 1,000 this year. We launched the navigation line in 2018 because we saw it was a critical extension of our website because there's a lot of people out there that need to talk to somebody. And that was the whole point of the navigation line, where people could call in and really help get some guidance around this journey. And we started in 2018 and with limited exposure because we don't have a lot of money to market this.
Sure.
A lot of it's word of mouth. Every year since we launched, we've increased the number of callers into the line, minimum 20%. This year, it's more like about 35%, but we have already surpassed 1,000 callers this year. It's families, it's schools, it's it's other nonprofits. Right. The calls come from everywhere.
And is that just the English? Because there's a Spanish-speaking version of this too, right?
That's right. In the last year and a half, we launched a Hispanic outreach version. We have the website in Spanish. We have Spanish-speaking callers. And this was all made possible by a grant we received from United Healthcare about a year and a half ago. And it's just been incredible. We are doing our school presentations in Spanish. We are handling, matter of fact, before we started this, about 10% of our callers to the nav line were Spanish speaking. That's up to 15% now. That's a significant increase in the percent of callers. And when you also consider the numbers are going up well over 1,000 now this year. And that's just a real testament to the fact that we've got this service available. We are doing a ton of work in the community. We've been to over 50 Hispanic outreach events this year, just trying to let the community know that we are here. We have the resources, and we are here to help in any way we can.
How did I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to get more into these websites. I mean, the Coffee Days support groups, you're taking it off the phone and online to being in person. So what are some of those opportunities in person?
Yeah, Coffee Days has been around for about 15 years. And again, in the last year, matter of fact, in about the last 6 months, we have launched Coffee Days in Spanish, Cafecitos. And we had our first Coffee Days a few months ago. It was a Molina High School in South Dallas. And we had, and this is brand new. And, people don't really know what to expect. We had 20 moms show up to the very first
That's incredible.
Cafecitos. And they were so grateful to our team for being there, for providing resources, for, sharing what we do. And we're continuing on with that. We've got a couple of different locations. And actually, we had an event last weekend, and I had somebody come up from Sunset High School and said, we need this program for our Spanish families. Can we do this? And so we've already been in touch. Our team will be talking to the folks there early next week. And I think we might have another one there at Sunset, I hope.
I mean, that's such incredibly crucial work because, listen, from my experience with the Hispanic community in particular, that's a tight-knit group of folks who generally are not talking about their feelings. And that's a tough nut to crack as well. Entry into the kind of cultural divide sometimes between English speaking and Spanish speaking so to go and have 20 people trust you in such an intimate way to gather and talk about their feelings, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason that we had such a welcome, reception to that was we went in initially and we said, what do you guys need? We're here. We provide a lot of resources around mental health. What do you need? We asked them, what do you need? And how can we help? Rather than going in and saying, hey, we're going to help you by doing this, we asked the question first. And I think that was a real critical strategy to really get those moms to really embrace what we're doing.
I think the other big game changer here has been the pandemic. Now, granted, we're over COVID, but man, the lingering effects of the depression, the isolation. I mean, you look at this generation of kids these days and you think, gosh, they're all so connected. They're playing virtual video games with each other. They're on their phone with each other. I think children have never been more alone than they are now, despite how the world is at their fingertips. But, the world might be at your fingertips, but no one's shoulder to shoulder with you, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you're right. COVID is sort of over. It seems like it's, comes up in the news all the time.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, after the full 2 years of the hardcore COVID timeframe, I had a conversation, probably my first conversation with somebody from the Plano ISD at just an event. We were just talking and I said, oh, thank goodness COVID is over. The kids are back to normal. It's going to be great. And she looked at me and she shook her head and she said, Kevin, they are not great. They are not okay. They have spent the last 2 years really dealing with some real trauma. They've been separated. They've lacked that real connectedness that is so important. And it's going to take a lot of time to get them back to where they should have been. And think about it, 2 years of social and emotional development that was wiped away. And it's not like you just pick up where you left off. There's a lot of work to be done to get those kids back to a better place. And you're right about, the connectedness part. Connectedness is not about being on the phone all the time or texting all the time. It's about real physical interaction and being with people and being with the people you care about and your friends. And that is just so important.
It's interesting because that takes the effort, right? And I think sometimes when you're in more of a depressed state, it's harder to get outside of the video game or the virtual chat or whatever you're kind of doing from home because that just feels so comfortable. So what can parents do to support their kids in, seeing people in person?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the key is parents, adults, spend time, real quality time with your kids, with your kids' friends, with your family friends. You've just got to be with them, show them you care about them, talk to them and ask them how they're doing. And again, this is in an ideal scenario. This is all, real physical connection and being with people. And, if it's a text, that's just not enough. If it's an email, it's probably not enough. If you can't be with somebody, maybe you call them on the phone and spend some quality time talking to them, and let's ask them how they're doing. It's not all about us and how we're doing. Let's ask them how they're doing. That is so important, to get that connection back and let people know we care about them.
One of the ways that I think you guys are genius, quite frankly, in terms of doing that, because listen, at the end of the day, sometimes it's just not going to happen between a parent and their kid. But you guys have, I want to talk about Hope Squad, because you have essentially deputized thousands of kids at this point. I mean, across North Texas, who are in their schools. It's an organized effort they are designated students who are committed to the cause of letting the other students know that it's okay not to be okay. And I think that, as opposed to my mom or dad sitting down with me and asking me what's wrong and what they can do, for a peer to create a place in an environment where, quite frankly, they spend more time than they spend with their parents, that, hey, it's okay to have this dialogue here and you're definitely not alone. I mean, that has been a real winner for you guys.
Yeah. And that's a great point. One thing we know for sure is that when kids are struggling, they're probably going to talk to their friends before they talk to their parents. Hope Squad is an incredible program. It's based out of Provo, Utah, and it is exactly what you said. It's a peer support program. So kids are elected by their peers to become Hope Squad members, and they're elected based on, we're looking for kids who are inclusive, who are good listeners, who are supportive, who are confidential when they hear things from their friends. These are the kids that are voted on by their peers to become Hope Squad members. Once they become Hope Squad members, they go through training throughout the year to understand more about mental health, the warning signs of someone who might be in trouble, and they literally become the eyes and ears of their classmates. So they're looking out for those kids who might be struggling. They're looking out for that kid who is in the corner of the lunchroom sitting by themselves, looking lonely. They're going to proactively go over there and strike up a conversation. And when they determine, or they sort of feel like there's a kid there that might be struggling, their job, let's be clear, is not to fix the problem. Their job is to get that student to a responsible adult and let the adults take it from there. But it's from a year ago, we had 49 Hope Squads in this part of North Texas. Here we are a year later, we are up to 89.
Oh, wow.
And we actually partner with another nonprofit in Fort Worth called Jordan Elizabeth Harris Foundation. They also handle Hope Squads more on the Tarrant County side. But between the two of us, we have over 200 Hope Squads across North Texas. And we just had, not too long ago, we had our second annual Hope Squad Conference, which was an incredible event. We had 1,500 Hope Squad members and their advisors there.
Incredible.
There was no cost to those kids to be there. It was amazing. So it is absolutely a great program.
So how do we get involved? How do we help? I feel like we shared some resources, which really, I'm so glad we did. That's really the most important thing for our audience. But if somebody's like, hey, I've got some resources myself and I would like to get involved, how can the community help you?
Yeah. Everything we do, we don't charge our school partners. Yeah. Everything we do is generally funded by our donors and our supporters. So if someone is interested in helping support us, whether it be a Hope Squad program or just some of our other programs, they can go to granthalliburton.org and learn more about what we're doing. They can actually donate on the website, or they can send us an email from the website and say, I'd like to get more involved. I'd like to volunteer. We've got a ton of volunteer opportunities. There's just a lot of ways to get involved with us. And probably the best first step is go to granthalliburton.org and learn more about the site, and we'll go from there. And if I could, really quickly, the mental health navigation line, if someone is looking for resources or needs help, that phone number is 972-525-8181, and that's Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
We can put that in the show notes too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I could sit here all day and talk to you. The work that you guys are doing is so crucial and really life-changing. I mean, you're saving lives at the end of the day. And listen, I know that there was a big price to pay to have this organization, but how nice that it is that Grant Halliburton has become the very thing that could have saved his life.
Yeah.
And we do appreciate you. So thank you so much for being with us today. I mean, could you imagine a world in which kids don't eat lunch alone? I mean, just that part of like, hey, I'm sitting in the corner alone, and there are other kids in my school whose obligation it is, whose responsibility it is, who is excited to go over and say, hey, are you okay?
And that child has a little bit of training too,
yes.
right? I think that sometimes, we all come from different backgrounds and different ways of doing things. So it gives me a little bit more peace knowing that they've been through some of the rigors to understand how to really approach somebody and how to have the conversation flow naturally. And gosh, when, I feel like the biggest takeaway from Kevin today for me with our kids who are so young is not to lose the connection so that it's not awkward when at 13
you have to reconnect.
We're trying to reconnect, and they're like, dude, I haven't talked to you. Like, I haven't had a real, heart to heart aside from did you do your homework in a year? And so it's like that reminder of how critical it is to have, and with each child, one-on-one time, and not just a big bunch of rush to do activities, but actual conversation. And so I just think that that it's such a wake up call for me. Not that I talk to Brighton constantly, but I'm sure that there will be a time when it'll be more of a stretch or will have to be more of an effort. And this is highly motivating to make sure that you keep that connection.
Don't you also feel like I'll admit I already do this with my kids where they'll have a problem or a stumble or whatever the case is. And my first instinct is always to fix it and to make it better. And sometimes that comes at the cost of exploring the feelings that got us to where we are, because I don't want my kids to be sad and I don't want them to have terrible things happen to them in their lives. But I also know, that that's exactly what's going to build character and strength and, all of these other things.
No, it goes against every part of being a parent to not try to fix it. I mean, I think that we're only being honest here, right? Yeah. I mean, we're trying to be our own little hope squad,
right? For sure.
Within our families. And of course we want to fix it. To see them sit in any kind of angst and feelings is really tough.
Yeah.
But this was a great conversation.
I loved it. And again, when you think about the numbers here, right? I mean, 1,500 kids that are coming to a conference to discuss how they can spread the word that it's okay to not be okay. 1,000 callers to the mental health navigation. I mean, that's 1,000 callers who called. You know what I mean? Probably another 10,000 who probably thought, gosh, I might need to call, and whether or not, they know about the resources or listen, that phone is pretty heavy, right? When you have to make that kind of call, that's a heavy phone. So we're going to make it easy for you. You don't need to pick up the phone. You can just hop on the internet. GrantHalliburton.org is where you're going to go. This website is beautifully designed. They have a ton of great information on here. So go ahead. We'll put it in the show notes for you. And remember, you can join us back with a new episode every Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. We are available everywhere that podcasts are, streaming on Amazon, Facebook, YouTube, where else? Google Podcasts, Spotify, right? iTunes, of course. Hey, listen, if you do nothing else today, go find yourself a friend you don't need to clean the house for. We'll see you soon.